All right, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good Tuesday morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the first NIST cybersecurity and DFARS cybersecurity webinar that we're holding. My name is James Valeni, and I'm the lead programmer at ISMG.
Hi, my name is Samuel Lichtenfels. I'm the cybersecurity officer at Global SFC Valve. All right, so let's get started in what we're going to be covering today. First off, we're going to go over sort of what is the current DFARS rule. Then we're going to go over what is covered defense information, CDI, and then what is controlled and classified information, CUI, and what these types of information are, in your systems. Then we're going to go over the NIST standards. Then we're going to go over the incident reporting requirements, then compliance with the rule, and then expected future regulatory changes within the DFARS rule. So then next, these are some of the questions we're going to answer today. We're going to answer what really is the DFARS 252.204-7012 clause, what really is the NIST SP 800-171 document. We're also going to answer how can my business comply with this regulation, and why is this regulation important?
Okay, we're going to take a look at this DFARS clause. This DFARS clause has been effective in prime defense contracts issued after October 16th. It states many requirements, but the main requirements of them are that you must comply with the National Institute of Standards and Technology Special Publication 800-171, and this is the NIST document that holds the cybersecurity standards. The deadline to implement these requirements is December 31st of this year. You must report all areas of non-compliance to the DoD Chief Information Officer for all contracts awarded before October 1st, 2017, and we'll provide the email for that later. If you have any exceptions or alternative measures to the NIST standard, the DoD CIO must approve of those exceptions. Another one of the most important parts of this DFARS clause is that cyber incidents must be reported within 72 hours to both the DoD at this website and the prime contractor or your higher tier contractor. In most of your cases, it would probably be Global SFC. This DFARS clause has been a required inclusion in all DoD contracts throughout the supply chain. So what this means is that there's a mandatory flow down to all subcontractor tiers. So the DoD passes it off to a shipbuilder, the shipbuilders pass it off to us, and then we pass it off further down the line.
So then looking at the contractor information systems, looking again at what type of information that this clause is providing protection for is unclassified systems owned or operated by or for a contractor and that processes, stores, or transmits covered defense information, CDI, controlled and classified information, CUI, which includes technical information marked with a DoD distribution statement, export control information, or any other information that requires safeguarding or dissemination controls and is A, marked or otherwise identified in the contract and provided by the government, or B, developed, received, transmitted, used, stored, etc. by the contractor in support of the contract. So these type of systems, the CDI and CUI systems, are definitely broad concepts. With that, really what information is CUI and falls under the protection that we typically give out to our vendors is going to be our drawings. And those are marked with a DoD distribution statement typically. And that's been sort of our main way of marking that these have been identified under CUI, because there's a lot of different stuff they can classify as CUI. We're working on getting better at, we're working on putting CUI labels on all of our drawings instead of just the DoD distribution statement, just to make it very clear that these drawings or other documents are CUI.
Like I said, the most important requirement of the DFARS, or at least one of them, is the cyber incident reporting requirement. As stated, you must report all cyber incidences within 72 hours to both the DoD and Global SFC Valve. The website's located there, but before you can submit a cyber incident, you must first acquire a DoD-approved medium assurance certificate from the link below. This reporting requirement is in effect upon award of the contract, and it doesn't matter, like the December 31st, 2017 deadline does not change the reporting requirement. So if your companies were to experience a breach or something like that in which CUI could be potentially confiscated, then this reporting requirement is still in effect even now, and you have to submit reports to the DoD and also Global SFC Valve. One of the reasons that this is important is because the DoD has the right to investigate any incidents that may occur. Contractors are obliged to preserve and protect images of affected information systems for at least 90 days. The DoD may conduct forensic analysis of these systems, and if they elect to conduct a damage assessment, it may request damage assessment information gathered by the contractor and seek access to information and equipment necessary to conduct forensic analysis. There's many different requirements in the NIST document that require you as a company to log this kind of information, this damage assessment information. And really it's so that if in the event of an attack or something, the DoD could come in and adequately assess the situation.
So now let's look at, compliance with this DFARS clause. So the deadline for the NIST 800-171 is December 31st, 2017. Now there's no extension expected. There was an original extension given in 2016 in December, just because there was enough pushback in the industry to postpone the deadline for this requirement. Now, it's important to note that implementation of this DFARS clause and of this NIST 800-171 really means having a information system security plan, an ISSP, a plan of action and milestones, POAM, and that accurately reflects the status of a contractor's compliance with NIST controls, even if the ISSP and POAM extend beyond the December deadline. So that's really important to note that this December deadline is really just calling for you to have an ISSP, the system security plan, and having a POAM, plan of action, outlining and detailing your what your roadmap is to completely implement all of the NIST controls. So the DoD is permitted to accept contractor proposed alternatives, but equally effective controls. So sort of an example of this is there's a control for voice over internet protocol that requires you to protect those type of technologies. And with that, a proposed alternative would be to just simply not use any of those technologies and to just use for your phone systems to use like a landline. So also look for a NIST SP 800-171A to be issued within the next year, which will include assessment procedures to help companies determine whether they are in compliance. So that's going to be a really important document to being able to review what your controls are and to ensure that you've met the requirement for these controls.
Now, it's important to note that there is no overarching auditing body that will come into your place of business and actively audit your compliance. A lot of the requests for compliance are just basically kind of based off the honor system, but you still need to do any contracts awarded prior to that October date, you need to send in the information to the DoD CIO, and you need to have the cyber incident reporting in place. But really, no one's going to come into your plant to make sure that you have all this filled. Neither are any certificates. There's no authorized certificate of NIST compliance. So even if a company offers 100% NIST compliance, they can't really do that in goodwill, and the DoD won't accept any of this. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the actual NIST document. There's 109 different controls, which are mostly about general best security practices for information security policy, processes, and configuring information systems securely. The document is meant to simplify the requirements set forth in the 853, which is used by federal information systems like the FBI, CIA, and NSA. And so for some kind of perspective, the 853 document that the FBI uses, that's about 500 pages long of controls, whereas the 171 is about 70 pages. Now with that decrease in pages, there's also a lot of decrease in clarity. The controls are just kind of very broad, very vague. And so it's important to kind of cross-reference the 53 document since it has more information to kind of delve into what the requirements truly mean. Okay, so here's basically an overview of the NIST standards. So these different control families listed below, they're basically kind of like the chapters of a book. They're broad categories that hold the different 109 different controls. As you can see, you have stuff like access control, which is just controlling different ways people can get to information. And then there's like physical protection, like locks and keys. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through each of these categories really quickly, just so you can get a very broad idea of what each of these mean and how to implement this for your company.
Yeah, so as James said, we're just going to do a quick overview of each of the control families and see what do each of the control families cover. So first off,
if you have any questions about any of these, please write them into the chat. Because like I said, we're going to blow through this super fast. So if any of these are just confusing or don't make any sense, we encourage you to write a question in the chat, and then we can cover it later in more depth.
Okay, so starting out with access control, you're going to want to limit your information systems access to only authorized users. You're going to want to separate the duties of individuals to reduce the risk of malevolent collusion. You're going to want to limit unsuccessful login attempts to reduce the chance of brute force password attacks. Require encryption and authentication of various devices, including mobile devices. You're going to want to limit the use of external devices, so anything USB, external hard drives, CDs, etc., to reduce the chance of malicious activity.
For awareness and training, you're going to want to educate managers, system administrators, and users about the applicable security policies, standards, and procedures for your company. Additionally, you're going to want to educate those people about the risks of their assigned role and the responsibilities that they have to ensure the safety of the company. So if this person has financial capabilities, they should be informed about the responsibilities that come along with that elevated level of privilege. Additionally, you should provide security awareness training on recognizing and reporting potential indicators of insider threat.
Next, with audit and accountability, you want to use automated mechanisms to enable monitoring, analysis, investigation, and reporting of unlawful system activity. Support on-demand analysis and reporting. Make internal changes based off of results of your auditing. Ensure that auditing information is protected and accurate.
For configuration management, this really covers limiting the types of programs that users can install. Many companies prefer to just set this up as administrators only can install programs. Additionally, if you allow that, you want to control and monitor all user installed software. Additionally, you want to ensure that users only have access to programs and features applicable to their position. You want to blacklist non-essential and possibly malicious programs using antivirus software. Most antiviruses do this already. And then you want to develop a baseline configuration to ensure a uniform setup throughout your network to help IT professionals assess the situations.
You're going to so next for identification and authentication, you're going to want to prevent the reuse of usernames, identifiers for a defined period. You're also going to want to disable usernames for a defined period of inactivity. You're going to want to enforce minimum password complexity, i.e. smart passwords. You want to utilize and enable multi-factor authentication to ensure user authenticity. You're also going to want to ensure that communications with logon servers are obscured through hashing and encryption.
For incident response, we kind of covered this before with the DFARS clause, but this is also a part of the NIST document. So you want to develop a robust incident response plan to utilize in the event of a cyber attack or other malicious incident. Within this incident response plan, you should gather local, state, media, and DoD contacts to inform of any potential data breaches. You also want to train employees on the implementation of your incident response plan so they know what to do. And you should test that incident response plan to identify and correct any weaknesses.
So next for maintenance, you're going to want to ensure that equipment removed off-site is sanitized of any CDI or CUI. Also require multi-factor authentication to establish non-local maintenance sessions with your MSP if you have an MSP. It might be all handled internally. Supervise the maintenance performed by maintenance personnel who do not normally have access to the system. You're also going to want to perform maintenance regularly.
For media protection, you want to protect information system media, both paper and digital, containing CDI or CUI. So this might be, lock and key. It might be encryption on a digital system. There's all different kinds. Additionally, you want to sanitize or destroy information system media containing CDI or CUI before disposal or release for reuse. Some companies might rent their PCs out. Before you return it, you want to make sure that those drives are wiped completely clean, just to maintain the CDI and CUI. Additionally, you want to mark any security attributes in a human readable method on documents, computers, electronic devices, containers, etc.
Now for personnel security, you want to screen individuals in accordance to applicable federal laws, executive orders, directives, regulations, policy standards, guidance, or any specific criteria prior to authorizing access to your systems containing CDI or CUI. So this would be simple as no phone screening or just criminal background screening. You're going to want to disable or terminate user accounts after a user has been let go or has quit. You also want to, individuals in elevated security roles may require additional background screening. So if you have somebody that will have access to a lot of information, it might be beneficial to perform some type of additional background screening.
For physical protection, this is kind of, actually physically protecting the documents themselves. So you want to limit access to organizational information systems and other equipment to ensure that only authorized users can enter. This probably through a lock and key kind of mechanism. You want to monitor the access of the physical facility through card readers, locks, and guards to ensure that outsiders cannot gain unauthorized access. And what's good about card readers specifically is that they also fulfill this third one, maintain some kind of audit log of physical access so you can track people through your business. Additionally, if any outside visitors come in, you want to escort them and monitor their activity to make sure that they don't enter into any areas where CUI could be present. You additionally want to control and manage physical access devices. And if you perform any kind of telework or work from home, you want to ensure additional safeguarding methods to make sure that the communication between the server and your telework site is encrypted and completely safe.
And then for risk assessment, you're going to want to assess the potential risk and impact levels for your organizational assets and individuals. And then you're also going to want to scan for and remediate vulnerabilities in the information systems and applications.
For security assessment, you're going to want to periodically assess and monitor the security controls for effectiveness in their application. So that would probably be reviewing the NIST document itself and seeing how applicable the ways that you've completed it are for your company and if they're working well. Then you want to develop and implement plans of actions for correcting these deficiencies and eliminating vulnerabilities.
So then with system and communications protection, you're going to want to protect organizational communications at the external boundaries and key internal boundaries of your information systems. You're going to want to outline organizational information security policies to include standards for architectural design, software development, and system engineering principles designed to promote information security. You're going to want to separate user functionality from information system management functionality. You're also going to want to prevent unauthorized and unintended information transfer via shared system resources. You're also going to want to implement cryptographic mechanisms to prevent unauthorized disclosure of CDI or CUI during transmission. And then finally, control and monitor the use of voice over internet protocol technologies.
For system and information integrity, you want to identify, report, and correct information and information system flaws in a timely manner. So if you find something, you want to make a change pretty quickly. You want to update malicious code protection mechanisms when new releases are available. So this is your antivirus. You can set those up to update automatically. Perform periodic scans of the information system and real-time scans of files from external sources as files are downloaded, opened, or executed. Again, this is mostly performed by an antivirus. You want to monitor information system security alerts and advisories and take appropriate actions in response. Just get a good feel as to real big security threats. And identify unauthorized use of the information system.
All right, so again, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat, and right after the recap, we'll go over and try to answer all the questions you have. So just to recap, the DFARS 252.204-7012 clause appears in all DoD contracts after October 2016. The NIST deadline to have the ISSP and POAM set for your compliance is December 31st, 2017. Also, these requirements are also important for growing companies in an increasingly vulnerable cybersecurity world.
So a lot of that is really overwhelming. I think there's a ton of different controls, some of which you probably already do just in your day-to-day work, just because it makes sense. But some of them aren't so obvious. And so really, what the NIST, what the DFARS is requiring, like we've said before, is really having a solid plan, with dates and milestones as to how your company plans on completing all of these requirements in at least some fashion. Okay, so we got one question. Can we continue to use Office 365 for our email, which is cloud-based, hosted on an offsite Microsoft server? So yes, we're pretty sure that Office 365 is DFARS compliant. We were actually just looking it up not too long ago because we had the same question ourselves. And we did find a couple articles stating that Office 365 is capable of holding DFARS compliant documents.
Yeah, we can definitely, it's come across in a good bit of research that we've done going over these controls, but yes, it has been stated that Office 365 does meet the NIST requirements. With that, now we can definitely pull some more resources in to confirm that and send them out, because it is important to note this webinar and the slides are actually being recorded, and we're gonna, at the end, sometime within the week, we will be sending these off to you guys for you guys to have and be able to go back to if you have any other, if you'd like to review it again. So.
Okay, we're not getting any more questions. All right, Sam?
Yep.
Okay, what we have for you today is because we as a company, we've struggled with our NIST compliance. We've realized how complicated things are. But really, at the end of the day, we think it's kind of simple. You just need to develop a plan. The real hard thing about it is organizing your information and having it in a very convenient location, making sure that you know what you're doing, what your plan of action is. And so we internally developed a program that we currently use to track our compliance with all of these different controls. And we're going to show it off here right now. But cool, we have another question. I'll answer that before we continue on. Hold on one second. Define a cyber incident, virus contained in an email or something affected by a virus on a website. Sam?
Yeah, that is a tough question because it's never really defined specifically what they consider a cyber incident to report to them. Now, this is where it goes up to the discretion of the company to really determine and interpret what needs to be released. Sort of an obvious statement would be anything that causes any loss of information, really anything that causes a big substantial loss of information would really need to be reported. If your system has been compromised and information has been stolen, then that would be the type of incident to report. Now, you wouldn't have to report every little incident that would occur. If there was an incident and your systems were shut down for a period of time, but they were brought up, no information was determined to be stolen, and everything was back up within like a couple minutes, then there's really no need to go that far with letting the DoD know of every little incident. But
Yeah,
again, it's up to the discretion of the company to determine what is reported, and that's how this sort of whole DFARS and NIST clause and compliance document work.
Yeah, I think companies need to just, yeah. We run our virus scanners quite frequently, and we get, one or two Trojans or malware or something like that. And, we all investigate it and see if it, any information was compromised, but we're not going to report that to the DoD. So you just have to kind of use common sense to determine, was this significant enough? Preferably if there was a loss of information, that would be significant enough to want to report it. Okay. All right, so we're going to take a look at this app really quick. So this is the app that we're developing to try to help companies become NIST compliant. So if you see right here, this is the home screen. We have a dashboard here, and as you see on the left side here, these are the 109 different controls separated into their categories. What's kind of nice about this is that each one of these categories, or well, controls rather, you can click on these and it brings up information about what that control really is. So for example, the first control is account management. So it states here, limit information system access to authorized users, processes acting on behalf of authorized users, or devices including other information systems. Now, these top three here, we have additional information about this control itself, a control recommendation, who should perform that control within the company, and a bit more information about it. So maintain a list of authorized users, defining their identity and associated role in sync with the system, application and data layers, account requests must be authorized before access is granted. And we're also including some information here. So this is a way for you as a company to get a user list quickly using Windows Server. So if you're a system administrator, this might be useful for you in developing your compliance with this control. Additionally, we have the supplementary guidance from the 853 document. So this is the FBI CIA level document. Like we said, it has a lot more information because it is so much longer. And so we've included that as well. And so these three paragraphs are relating to this control. Additionally, we have additional mappings to this NIST 53 document. And clicking on these takes you to the access control from the 53 document, straight from the NIST government site. Additionally, your company, and this is probably the most important thing, is your company can set status, compliance, and remedial action. So here, you can set your compliance, whether you're compliant, partially compliant, non-compliant, or you do not apply, which then changes this flag. You can set your compliance statement. So just a brief description of how your company is compliant. You can store a completion date for that, just so you have it on record as to when you completed this. And if you haven't completed it, you can develop a plan, a remedial action plan to complete it. And then you can set a planned completion date for that. So each of these different controls has all this information available, and it's fully editable. After you do your company's first assessment, most of these will be filled out. Unfortunately, I didn't fill all these out, so a lot of these are still blank, as you can see here. But when you come back here to this dashboard, you can see total control statistics of how many controls you're compliant with, how many you're partially compliant, how many you're non-compliant, unknown, or it does not apply. Additionally, there's some category progress bars for each control family. So here's a total compliance progress. So as you can see here, we are compliant with 9 different controls up here in the access control. And so that pops up here. And using these dates, based off of these fields here, we can develop essentially a plan of action with milestones off this calendar. So as you can see, during the month of December, on December 1st, we are planning on completing this account management. So really, what we're looking for to do as well is to turn this calendar into a more formal document. So if a auditor or something ever needed to see your POAM, it could be automatically generated just by filling out these forms. Additionally, we have some terms and definitions for some confusing terms that may pop up while you're working your way towards compliance. And we have some document templates. So we do have the Information System Security Plan template, which is usable for any company. You can insert your logo as needed, and you can kind of use this as a baseline information system security plan. Some things will need to be changed. Obviously, this needs to be edited. It could greatly be simplified as well if you need, but this is a good baseline for any company trying to make an ISSP. Additionally, we have an inventory management template, which is just a good way of holding information about what computers you have on inventory, include their IPs, and additional information. So really, this is the app that we're getting ready and going to put it on the market sometime next week. Like I said, we plan on adding a lot of additional functionality to this because this has been so helpful to us that we think a lot of other people would find it to be helpful too. Oh wait, I need to do
Okay.
So if there are any more questions, we'll be glad to take them. But if not, that concludes our DFARS and NIST cybersecurity webinar. We're still working on the app cost, but we're shooting on about a $4.99 one-time price point. All right.
Okay,
Thanks,
any other
everyone.
questions? Anything? I just want to type those in the chat bar. We've also created a business questionnaire, and it was originally designed for smaller businesses to really provide with them with some feedback. It gives it asks some simple questions, and you can work on filling it out. And then if you would like to, you can send it in to us, and we can give you some simple some feedback on what you can do. James just added a link to that so everybody can see that. They can download it from there. But this provides some simple feedback. We can also then use this, if you would like, we can use it to upload into the app and then sort of get you started with the app.
Yeah, it provides a good baseline as to how your company's cybersecurity posture is and what things can be improved. One of the main difficulties that we found in actually handling this compliance is that, as we said, the DoD expects this to be flowed down infinitely down the supply chain. However, where it gets complicated is that the farther you go down, the more simple the information systems really are. We deal with a lot of companies that have maybe 1 to 2 computers. And so really telling these companies that they need to become compliant with this very complicated NIST cybersecurity document really throws them for a loop. So we're really trying to get them up to speed. And so we provided this as kind of a way for us to try to reach out and help them. Because I would imagine for a lot of these smaller companies, a lot of the stuff could be handled policy-wise. For example, reusing identifiers, reusing usernames. You just make a policy that you don't reuse usernames. And so it doesn't require a ton of different, IT skills. It just requires, having a good head and making sure that you recognize why these cybersecurity controls are important, and making it kind of part of your ISSP, basically.
That's about all we have. Any last questions?
I want to thank everyone for attending. Ultimately, when it comes down to this, we're still learning every day about this compliance. So we are by no means true super experts on this, but we feel like we need to share with people what we've learned, and methods that we've used to ultimately become compliant. Okay, if that's all, I'd like to wish everyone a good day. Have a happy Tuesday, and thank you again for coming.